The crack of my daughter's hand against my cheek echoed through the cathedral like a gunshot, and for a moment time seemed to freeze. 300 guests gasped in unison as I staggered backward, my cheek burning and my heart hammering. I never imagined that after 67 years of living, I would find myself humiliated in front of so many people, and yet that single moment would reveal more about my daughter than I had ever known. My name is Linda Harper, and I've spent most of my life building a company from the ground up. A tech company, my pride and my legacy, a business that started in a small office with little more than an idea and a stubborn refusal to quit. Over decades, I grew it into a thriving enterprise, achieving financial independence that allowed me to live life on my own terms. I faced challenges, betrayals, and setbacks, and I've learned to trust my instincts. But nothing could have prepared me for what my own daughter was about to put me through. Olivia. My daughter came into my life when she was just 5 years old. I adopted her after years of instability and neglect, left her wary, fragile, and craving safety. She was beautiful, smart, and endlessly curious, the kind of girl who could light up a room without trying. Over the years, I nurtured her, supported her dreams, and watched her blossom into a confident, capable young woman. Or so I thought. Lately, I'd noticed a shift, an increasing distance, a focus on ambition and wealth that seemed to eclipse the warmth of our bond. Now she was about to marry Nathan, a young man from a family that had once been immensely wealthy. On the surface, it looked like a perfect match, an alignment of love and privilege. But beneath the polished appearances, Nathan's family was struggling, financially desperate for quick liquidity, a fact that Olivia didn't fully disclose to me. I had prepared what I thought would be the most meaningful gift imaginable, a substantial stake in my company, a legacy I had built with decades of hard work enough to provide her with security for the rest of her life. I imagined her being proud, taking her place in a family legacy that was ours. But Olivia, in her pursuit of independence and immediate gratification, demanded something entirely different: $30 million in cash. The sheer audacity, the sense of entitlement, it stunned me. As I sat there in my navy blue dress, the muffled hum of the cathedral around me, I realized that this wedding wasn't just about love. It was a test of loyalty, trust, and family bonds, one that could either bring us closer or shatter everything I had worked so hard to protect. And I had no idea which way it would go. After the initial shock of that slap, I found myself replaying the weeks leading up to the wedding, trying to make sense of how we had arrived at this point. I had intended to give Olivia a gift that would change her life in a meaningful, lasting way, a 45% stake in Harper Technologies. It wasn't just a financial gesture, it was a vote of confidence, a way of saying, you are capable, you are ready, and I trust you to carry on the legacy we've built together. I would retain operational control to guide the company, but she would have a share large enough to ensure her security for life. When I presented the idea to Olivia, I expected excitement, maybe even tears of gratitude. Instead, she recoiled, her perfectly manicured hands pushing the leather portfolio away as if it carried some contagion. I don't want to be tied down to your business, she said flatly, her eyes avoiding mine. Quarterly meetings, dividends, shareholders? It's just not me. I blinked. Not you. I had spent decades teaching her the value of hard work, responsibility, and the power of a legacy, and now she wanted none of it. My heart sank, but I tried to hide the disappointment. Then what do you want, Olivia? How can I help you start your life with Nathan? Her eyes sparkled with a mix of excitement and calculation. If you really want to give us a gift that matters, she said slowly, $30 million in cash. I almost laughed, then remembered she was deadly serious. $30 million liquid, immediately available, enough to buy any vineyard estate in Napa, the one she had been dreaming about with Nathan. The sheer audacity of the request made my stomach turn. I tried to reason with her. Olivia, that's not a gift. That's nearly everything I've built in my life. Are you asking me to dismantle decades of work for a house? She waved off my concern as if it were nothing. "Mom, you've always told me to follow my dreams. This is how you can help." I felt a cold sting, not just from the audacity, but from the subtle implication that my life and my hard-earned wealth were merely tools for her convenience. It wasn't just a financial request, it was a test, a challenge to my authority, and most heartbreakingly, a dismissal of all the love, sacrifice, and guidance I had given her over 23 years. Over the next 2 weeks, Olivia and Nathan's pressure intensified. There were calls at odd hours, emails that hinted at disappointment, and casual comments that made me question my generosity. Olivia no longer asked how I was feeling or whether I needed support. The conversation always circled back to the $30 million. The girl who once clung to me during storms, the little girl who had needed nothing more than safety and love, had grown into a young woman who measured our relationship in cash and concessions. Late at night, I would sit in my office staring at the city skyline, remembering the Olivia of years past, the girl who learned to ride a bike with my hand steadying hers, the one who cried herself to sleep after a bad dream and trusted me to protect her. That memory clashed violently with the Olivia before me, now poised, calculating and insistent. The tension wasn't just financial, it was moral, emotional, and deeply personal. I realized then that this wedding was about more than a ceremony. It had become a battleground between my vision of love, family, and responsibility and Olivia's pursuit of independence and instant gratification. And I had no idea which way the balance would tip or whether I could protect both my daughter and the life I had built. The day of the wedding arrived under a gray, drizzly sky, fitting somehow with the storm I felt in my chest. I arrived at the cathedral dressed in the navy blue gown Olivia had approved months ago and took my seat in the front row. The building was nearly full, 300 guests, most of them, Nathan's family and friends, all looking as polished and perfect as the floral arrangements that filled every pew. Olivia looked radiant as she walked down the aisle on her uncle's arm, her gown a confection of silk and lace. And for a moment, I let myself believe that nothing could shatter this beautiful scene. Then came the cocktail hour, which seemed to pass without incident. Guests sipped champagne, laughed politely, and offered congratulations. I exchanged pleasantries with Nathan's relatives, maintaining my smile, though my heart remained tight with unease. I could feel the tension lurking beneath the surface, like the calm before a lightning strike. Dinner was served the ballroom at the Fairmont Hotel, gleaming with crystal white roses and the finest china. The speeches began, the best man spoke with charm, the maid of honor offered a heartfelt tribute, and all seemed as they should. But then Olivia stood. I noticed a subtle shift in the room as she began to speak, her voice carrying, clearly steady, but pointed. "I want to thank everyone for being here tonight," she said, scanning the audience. "Derek and I are so grateful for all the love and support, and I especially want to thank my mother, Linda Harper." Polite applause rippled through the crowd. "She has given us the most incredible wedding gift, the down payment on our new home in Napa Valley." The applause swelled, 300 hands clapping for a generosity I had never granted. My stomach dropped, and my hands went cold. "What is she saying?" I whispered to myself. My heart raced as I realized the full scope of what she had just done, announced to everyone that I had handed over $30 million, knowing that social pressure would make it nearly impossible for me to back out. I stood slowly, trying to keep my voice steady. "Olivia, that's not correct," I said, my voice carrying across the room despite my trembling. "I have never agreed to give you that money. The gift I offered was a 45% stake in Harper Technologies. You rejected it." A pin drop would have sounded deafening. Olivia froze, her radiant smile faltering into something sharper, more calculated. Nathan's face flushed with anger. "Linda." This isn't the time or place, he started, but I held up my hand, my resolve hardening. The time for private conversations had ended when Olivia publicly manipulated the truth to bend me to her will. And then came the slap. I felt the sharp sting of her hand against my cheek, the force reverberating through my body. Shock, humiliation, and disbelief washed over me all at once. The guests gasped, security rushed toward us, and for a moment, everything seemed suspended in chaos. I was escorted out of the ballroom, the murmurs of the crowd following me like shadows. Some voices expressed shock and sympathy, but most remained carefully neutral, unwilling to take sides publicly. As I walked through the hall, I could hear whispers, always knew something was off. Poor girl dealing with that kind of mother. The narrative was already being rewritten, casting me as the controlling, bitter mother who had ruined her daughter's perfect day. By the time I reached the safety of my car, my cheeks still burning from humiliation, I knew this was far from over. The stakes had shifted entirely. I was no longer simply a mother attending her daughter's wedding. I was a woman under pressure, publicly challenged and faced with a choice: let the lie stand or confront it regardless of the consequences. After the chaos of the wedding, I couldn't shake the unease gnawing at me. Something about Nathan's calm, rehearsed demeanor didn't sit right, and I began to dig deeper. I pulled out my phone and contacted a private investigator, the same one I'd used for due diligence in my company. Over the next few days, the truth unraveled faster than I could have imagined. Nathan's family was not the picture of wealth they projected. In fact, they were drowning in debt, over $47 million owed to various creditors, and the family business had been teetering on bankruptcy for months. Worse, some of their recent transactions raised red flags for wire fraud and credit fraud. It was a harsh reality, and my first instinct was shock. How could Olivia, so bright and perceptive, have been swept into this without noticing the warning signs? But then I realized something more important. This wasn't Olivia's fault entirely. She had been charmed, manipulated by a man who saw her as a path to quick cash. The same person she trusted now threatened not only my company, but her own financial security and legal standing. I called Olivia in, sitting down with her at our usual coffee shop where so many of our milestones had been celebrated. I showed her the contracts, financial records, and evidence of fraudulent activity I'd gathered. Her eyes widened as she absorbed each document, the reality sinking in. I didn't realize she whispered, her voice trembling. I didn't know he was like this. Together, we crafted a plan. I contacted my attorney, Marcus, who specialized in both corporate law and federal investigations. We coordinated with the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit to report the fraudulent transactions Nathan had attempted in my name. Throughout the process, I was careful to shield Olivia from direct confrontation with Nathan's family or exposure to potential legal retaliation. Every phone call, every document review was handled delicately to protect her while building a solid case. As we worked, something shifted between us. Olivia's guilt and relief mingled with understanding. She saw clearly now how her ambitions had been exploited and how easily her trust had been weaponized. Our conversations became more honest, more intimate, and for the first time in weeks, I felt a true sense of partnership rather than tension. By the time the FBI moved in freezing assets and preparing charges for wire and credit fraud, I knew we had done more than safeguard a company or reclaim stolen funds. I had protected Olivia from financial ruin, legal jeopardy, and the emotional devastation of realizing she had married a manipulator. Justice was being served, and the weight of fear and uncertainty that had hung over us began to lift. Sitting across from Olivia, holding her hands in mine, I realized this was more than a victory in business or law. It was a reclaiming of trust, of safety, and of our bond as mother and daughter. For the first time in weeks, we could breathe again, knowing we had survived the storm together and that somehow the storm had made us stronger. 6 months after the chaos of the wedding, Olivia and I sat together at our favorite coffee shop once again. This time, the atmosphere was calm, even hopeful. She had begun taking evening business classes to understand Harper Technologies, learning about operations finances, and the responsibilities that come with ownership. When I slid a leather folder across the table, her eyes widened. Inside were documents granting her 51% of the company. "You're ready," I said simply. "It's time to take over, Olivia. You've earned it." Her smile was tentative but genuine. She had faced mistakes, manipulation, and disappointment, yet she emerged wiser, more grounded, and truly independent. Watching her step into this responsibility reminded me of the lessons life had quietly been teaching me all along. Money cannot buy love, respect, or loyalty. The bonds we nurture with patience, observation, and intuition are far more valuable than any inheritance. True independence is not about escaping relationships or shirking responsibility. It is about making choices with courage, integrity, and accountability. Our story is a reminder that even in the face of betrayal and manipulation, it is possible to protect yourself and those you love while maintaining dignity and compassion. Women of a certain age, like many of you watching, can learn to set boundaries, make wise decisions, and safeguard both their assets and their hearts. Strength, wisdom, and love can coexist even in the most challenging circumstances. Thank you for joining me on this journey. If this story resonated with you, please consider liking, sharing, and commenting with your own experiences or reflections. Your voice matters. And don't forget to subscribe to Real Her Stories for more heartfelt, empowering stories about resilience, courage, and the enduring bonds of family. Remember, it's never too late to stand strong. Make your own choices and protect what truly matters.